Hello, welcome to another edition of The Outpost. My name is Mike Hurd.
And I'm Adam Alexander.
And welcome to this edition of this award-winning show. And cool beans, we got to share this with everybody, but with the Wisconsin Community Media, it was recently announced that we are the best public show for the amateur level. So I think we're about time ready for our contracts now. So, yeah, the goal of the Outpost is one to every veteran has a piece of American history, and we love to hear their stories. But secondly, it's the mission of the Disabled American Veterans, DAV. Adam and I are members of DAV Chapter 17, and we have a very special guest today, as do always. We have Joe Fuenger, correct? Mm-hmm. And Joe is a DAV National Service Officer. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Let's talk about your military service first. What branch did you serve in and what time period?
So I joined the Marine Corps in 2000 after some kind of failed semesters at school, I guess, and I figured I needed some discipline, so joined the military. Went into the Marine Corps, decided to go to the reserves, so I joined the reserve unit here in, well, not here, but in Milwaukee. And did 6 years with them in the reserves, was activated in 2004, 2005.
No, what was your MOS?
I was a machine gunner.
And that's our military acronym stuff we do, but MOS is Military Occupational Specialty, which is like job description. Yeah.
Right. So I was with an infantry company. I was an 0331, which is a machine gunner in the Marine Corps. So I got activated from 04 to 05 to Iraq. So spent almost a year, activated, but I think there was only about like seven months in country. But spent some time overseas in a lovely area called the Triangle of Death. Saw some combat there. And, after that, I was almost done with my contract. So when I came back home, did a little bit more training, but then was out and decided to then go back to school. And I had more discipline to actually get through the coursework.
Okay, and one thing to share. Well, one thing of interest, when you think about it, just how the transition, of the veteran community. But we're all post 9/11 veterans here. Just how the times have really changed. So, and then the other thing, you received the combat action ribbon, didn't you?
Yeah. Yep. Did receive the combat action ribbon while on our deployment to Iraq. We thought that we might get a presidential unit citation, but I don't think that ever happened. Our unit actually, according to our battalion commander and some statistics, I think we found the most weapons caches, tonnage-wise, of any unit in Iraq during our time there. Because we were in a hotbed spot. Thought we were going to get called into Fallujah 2, but that never happened. We had I forget the guy's name now, but one of the cities in our AO was like the hometown city of like the number one guy on America's list at the time.
Zarqawi?
Yeah, Zarqawi.
Yeah, I remember. I still have an old wanted poster in a scrapbook.
So we swept that town constantly, trying to see if we could get him. It didn't end up happening.
I got asked. Do you have one of the old Saddam matchbooks? Remember? I think it was Task Force 54 or something.
You mean the cards?
Yeah, well, they had, right, you're right, they had cards and matchbooks,
yeah. I had a pack of the cards. I might still have them. I have like a box of all my stuff from Iraq, like sitting at home, so.
Well, again, a salute to your service and all that you've done and definitely been in harm's way for our country. Well, okay, with the disabled American veterans, one of the things that happens, and Adam and I can attest to it as veterans, is that when people know we're involved with the VSO or Veteran Service Organization, it's inevitable people will come up and they'll say, hey, back when I was serving, I jumped off a tank and twisted my knee, or, I was taking a PT test, I popped an ankle, or I fell, and so forth and so on. And a lot of people will ask, how do I file a claim? And what I really get excited about today's show is that Joe is a National Service Officer, and he is the guy, when you have those questions, he's there to help. So, I give you a phone call and I say, hey, I think something happened to me when I was serving in the Army with my back, with my knee. What's the first step? How does it all work?
So,
What's a National Service Officer?
So, National Service Officers, our specialty is helping veterans with their claims benefits or claims with the VA for any disability benefits that they might be entitled to. So, what we mainly do is help them through that process. So, it can be very confusing trying to do it on your own. That's why we're there. So, our job is to make it as smooth as possible, make sure that you understand what evidence is needed, what forms you might need to file for specific claims, things like that. When a veteran that's new to the process always calls, I always have to kind of explain, we need power of attorney first so that we can, see into your file. They may have filed claims before, they may not have filed claims before. So we really got to take a look at where we're starting from. And then at that point, it's always explaining, okay, if you want to get a condition service connected, I have to explain this all the time. So the three main pieces of evidence that you would need is evidence of treatment or something in service that could have caused the condition that you're trying to claim, right? So think of that as like your past evidence.
So evidence of treatment?
Right. Treatment or diagnosis, or like in cases of exposure, proving that you were exposed to whatever it was, stuff like that. And the main thing that the VA is going to use for that is your service treatment records. So the veteran doesn't have to go get those service treatment records. When they file their first claim, VA will reach out to National Personnel Records Center and get those. But that's evidence piece number one, right? That's like your past evidence. Your present evidence is going to be any current medical records. So if you're claiming that you have a screwed up knee or back or what have you, we need current medical records showing that you actually do have that disability. A lot of veterans make the mistake of filing a claim and assuming that VA it's their job to then figure out if the veteran has the condition that they're claiming, and that's not the case. So you have to provide some medical evidence showing that you either have treatment or diagnosis for whatever it is that you're claiming, right? So current medical records. So that's going to be your present evidence. So you have past, present, and the last piece is going to be a link between the two. So veterans a lot of time misunderstand that as to what that actually is. And what it is a medical opinion from a medical professional basically saying that they believe that the current condition that you have is related back to said treatment, diagnosis, whatever it was in service, right?
So what I think I'm hearing you say, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they want a connection between that bad thing that occurred when you were serving medically is still hurting you today in
Correct.
This year?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's the link between your past and present evidence, right? Is that medical opinion saying that they believe that what is going on with you now is related to those incidents in service, right? So that's the key. And that's one of the main things that a lot of veterans don't understand. And I run into a lot of veterans throughout the years that have said, I've been fighting this claim for so many years, and I keep giving them new medical evidence and this and that. And I take a look at the claim, and a lot of the times you'll read through a decision and the VA is not necessarily disagreeing that the veteran has the condition. They agree that he has this disability, he or she has this disability. But the problem is that the medical opinion was not favorable. So they agree that you have the condition, they're just saying that it's not related to service according to the examiner they sent you to, right? So veterans constantly misunderstand this, and they say, well, they denied my claim, so I'm going to give them more evidence of treatment, more evidence of treatment, more evidence of treatment, and they keep trying to appeal this, right? Well, all that evidence is really doing is showing that they still have the condition. VA never disagreed that they had that condition, right, from the first place. What they need is a new medical opinion to link that condition to service, right? And the only way to really argue an unfavorable medical opinion from the VA is with a favorable medical opinion from some other medical professional. So I get it all the time where a veteran comes in and they're like, well, I've been doing this for 10 years and I haven't got it granted. And I say, this is what you need. You need a medical opinion because the VA agrees you have the condition, they just don't think it's related to service. Well, how come nobody else has told me that? I don't know.
Well,
Somebody else should have told you that a long time ago.
Now, one of the terms you always hear bandied about in the veterans community, compensens. What is compensens?
So the compensation and pension exams that veterans are talking about is VA examinations that they send you to for compensation and pension claims. So VA has recently moved more towards using third-party contractors for their exams. So you're not, if you're a veteran and you're in the middle of a claim, you're not going to have many exams, if any, that are going to actually happen at a VA hospital. Most of them are going to be contracted out through third parties that the VA contracts with. So the compensation and pension exams are basically the medical examinations that you go through as part of the claims process. What veterans need to understand about that is, throughout a claims process, I get a lot of times where veterans say, well, they have all my medical records, why do I need to go to this exam? Well, there's a big difference between your normal progress notes that your doctor is going to keep from treating you and an examination to evaluate a very specific condition, right? So a lot of the times, your normal progress notes that your doctor is keeping is not going to touch on all the things that the VA wants to know about that condition. So it's very important for veterans to go to those exams if they are prompted to. Another way that veterans can take care of those examinations or try to get them done themselves is the VA has a website. So if you look up like VA disability benefits questionnaires or DBQs, you'll find blank examinations for all these different types of conditions so that you could print them out and take them to whatever doctor you want, right? Obviously, you're going to want that doctor to be proficient in whatever condition you're claiming, but yeah, if you're not comfortable with maybe seeing some doctor that you've never seen for that condition before, and your doctor is willing to do it, that you have maybe outside the VA or what have you, you can print off an exam and take it to your own doctor, have them fill it out, sign it, and you can use that as evidence for your claim.
Interesting.
Some people just have a, what's the word? Some people just don't necessarily like dealing with VA doctors or, have an aversion to them.
Sure.
I haven't had any problems with any,
No.
so I
Saw
You know,
a
I
T-shirt
think
or
it's
a mug or
fine,
something
but-
one time that said the VA giving you a second chance to die for your country. So
yeah, right. So yeah, I've seen those, but all in all, the healthcare through the
Yeah.
VA is very good.
I was inpatient in a VA hospital for almost a year, so I don't have a bad thing to say about them either. So.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed very good care in different places that I've lived across the country. So yeah, generally the VA system is very good.
I got a question for you, because the one thing we were all blessed with, electronic records and things are current. Well, I'm hoping you were.
Not really.
Not really.
Some
Okay,
of it, I
okay.
guess. You
Yes.
mean like while we were in?
Yeah.
I still see a lot of
Okay.
hand
Well, we won't go
scribbled
there.
stuff.
But things are a lot better than what they were then. But I'll tell you what, the one group I really run into a lot is the Vietnam veterans, Agent Orange, and sometimes it's getting records, information, and they did be blunt, back when folks were in country, they did a horrible job of keeping records of things. I mean, how do you deal with that? What have you learned? What is the message to give to those Vietnam veterans that are wanting to file a claim at this stage of life?
I honestly, I would always just say reach out to your local service office, right? So that's number one of where to start. If you've filed some claims before and you've had some issues in the past, we'll be able to maybe explain things better so that you understand why the certain decisions were made. But we can also help you reopen claims or file new stuff. The presumptive conditions list for Agent Orange exposure or herbicide exposure is constantly growing. So,
what are some of the, just right off the top of your
Greatest
head,
hits.
some of the conditions? This is a test.
So the most common ones that we see are usually like diabetes, Parkinson's, things like that.
1,000 kinds of cancer.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different cancers on there. There's ischemic heart disease. So recently what they added was the hypothyroidism, the Parkinson's isms, right? So Parkinson's-like syndromes, and then the bladder cancer. So those were the most recent additions. Right now, VA is going through a lot of different claims that they had to review because veterans had claimed those conditions prior, saying that they were related to herbicide exposure, but VA couldn't grant them at the time. They weren't conceding that those things were related to herbicide exposure.
Now kind of walk me through this, because before you talked about, having those past records and then the current, and I can see where folks would have current records, but what is the expectation that's put? Is there an expectation put on that Vietnam veteran of what they need to find from the past? I mean, what do they look for?
So, with recent court cases that have been decided, it's no longer just boots on the ground, right?
Okay.
So you used to have to be able to prove that you had boots on the ground, whether that was for a day or two or for months at a time, right? And a lot of times veterans think that their DD-214 may prove that by them having like a Vietnam campaign medal or something like that listed on the DD-214. However, that's not always the case.
Yep.
Units receive the Vietnam campaign medal a lot of times for being in support of that operation, but that doesn't necessarily mean they were on the ground or in country. So VA will pull records to try and confirm that the veteran was either boots on the ground or in certain cases served in inland waterways. Now,
Blue Water Navy now?
well, and now Blue
Okay.
Water Navy, which includes the 12 miles off the coast of Vietnam. So if you were on a ship that was within that 12-mile, area from the coastline, then now VA will concede that you would have been exposed to herbicides, as much as those veterans who had boots on the ground in Vietnam. And also they're looking at, Thai air bases, different locations like that outside of Vietnam. So
Is Okinawa fall into that,
off the top of my head, I don't think so. There is a list of places where they stored
Right.
herbicides inside and outside the country. You can find that on the VA's website.
Okay.
But off the top of my head, I can't say.
Okay.
for Japan.
Because you bring up kind of a good point, because, okay, the Agent Orange was in Vietnam, but how did it get from that place in the U.S. to
Sure.
Vietnam? And
Yep.
so there's a lot of tracks there.
Yeah.
It's pretty awful.
The other thing that I run into a lot too is that a lot of veterans want to claim almost anything related to their herbicide exposure. Like if they've been granted like diabetes or something already based on, exposure to herbicides, then they start lumping a lot of other things into it. Not necessarily a bad idea. Just make sure you do your research first to try and have a conversation with your doctor, I guess is what I would say. See if they think that could be the cause of what other conditions you might have, especially for those conditions that are not on the presumptive list, right?
So, and because I think what I'm hearing you say is, so that when they look at the current medical information, that it does say something about that. Am I right? Or
It's more so like you can claim things related to herbicide exposure if they're not on the presumptive list. But if you're going to do that, you're going to need a really good medical opinion, from a doctor explaining why they believe it's related to said exposure. But I've ran into cases in the past where veterans thought that they had a condition related to herbicides, but it actually wasn't. But they did get service connected because it was from a different exposure that they had. So when you take a look at what you did in the military, if you were dealing with any type of chemicals, things like that, separate from Agent Orange, right? Dealing with different lubricants or fuels or what have you. There's all types of different chemicals that we may have used in the military depending on what your job was. It might be exposure to those instead of what you thought it was. So
well, you're kind of running right now with the big title of toxic exposure to
Right.
a certain degree. The other thing too is, especially the Marines were really impacted with this. Could you talk a little bit about Camp Lejeune for those people that served in the Marine Corps, might have spent some time there, and what it all means?
Sure. So Camp Lejeune, I forget what year this actually happened off the top of my head, but the government has conceded that the water in Camp Lejeune was contaminated for a number of years. The specific dates are on the VA website. So if you were on that base in those areas, you're conceded to have been exposed to said water contamination. There was different chemicals that were leaked into the groundwater from different areas of the base, and some of the things that are on. So the VA also has a presumptive list if you were exposed to that. And some of the things on there, I believe bladder cancer may be on there as well, and some other types of cancer. So for veterans that may not have been in Vietnam, but maybe you were on Camp Lejeune and you have some type of cancer or something else that's going on, you may want to take a look at what happened at Camp Lejeune. And I would also encourage veterans, if whatever base they served on, look at the EPA website, because
Really?
some military facilities are now Superfund sites for environmental cleanup. It may not have been.
I'm thinking was McClellan one of those bases?
I think so. I think I've heard that mentioned before.
Yeah, because
I just don't know all of them off the top of my head.
McClellan's where they did all the NBC stuff
Yeah,
for Army guys.
that's true.
So, yeah.
So yeah, I had something come in the other day where a veteran was claiming possible water contamination at Camp Lejeune, or not Camp Lejeune. I'm sorry, Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I think that's the wrong base. But after doing a little bit of research, I found on the EPA website that they have been trying to clean up stuff at Camp Pendleton for quite a while now. So.
Wow.
It is possible, and there was some exposure of chemicals into the water system there on base. I'm just not exactly sure how long.
Do you know? I mean, do you know offhand because you have a lot of Wisconsinites, Wisconsin Guard. Do you know if Fort McCoy falls under one of those or not?
That I have no idea.
Okay.
I haven't looked into that one.
Yeah, I've got now I'm kind of got to check the website.
right?
So
Yeah, because while I was in, we did plenty of reserve training up there. So
so I gotta ask one more thing. Can't help myself on this one. Near and dear to me, burn pits.
okay.
That is especially for us post 9/11 folks, and but Desert Storm, Desert Shield as well. But burn pits for us, I can remember, I was getting medically retired, and an NCO came up to me and said, "Hey, sir, have you been on the burn pit registry?" And I was like, "Oh no, I haven't." So literally that night at Fort Knox, I went on there, put all my information, and then it came out with the 15 different times I had exposures, and I was like, "Oh my God," because it was like Iraq, Djibouti, Afghanistan, and it was a real awakening. And I know it's been for DAV, it's been a real big focus. Were you burn pit exposed in Afghanistan?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Could have been. I'd check the list.
Yeah.
They have like a list of bases, and
Well, you were out in the sticks, though, right?
Yeah, I was way out in Indian country.
Mm. Well,
but yeah. So burn pits, most recent. The VA calls it like different conditions due to exposure to particulate matter in Southwest Asia, right? So, but that doesn't just include Iraq, Afghanistan, whatever, right? Because it also includes, like you were saying, Djibouti,
Yep.
right? So that's a little further away, but. So the conditions that they've come out with so far related to the particulate matter in the air in those areas is asthma, sinusitis, and rhinitis. So far, the VA has done enough studies to say that, if you were diagnosed with sinusitis, rhinitis, or asthma within 10 years of like your exposure to that area, then they're saying that it's probably related to that, right? So you could that would be a claim for a lot of veterans.
I got to ask you, how have the claims been? Because I know it was a real issue with, I think, was it 20% approval or something? It was a very low number.
Well, now it's better because there have been veterans claiming stuff like that for a while now.
Okay.
But for veterans that did like the sinusitis, rhinitis, things like that, VA went back and reviewed those claims then. So it's better now, at least for those conditions. There is talk that they're probably going to add some. You probably want to talk to Al LaBella on this because he's the legislative guru. But I believe they're about to add possibly some like respiratory cancers as well. So it's one of those things to pay attention to as a veteran of Iraq, Afghanistan, or any of those areas. If you were in that area, if you were near a burn pit, because hopefully the list doesn't grow to be similar to Agent Orange or herbicides, but you just never know what's going to happen.
That's my greatest frustration with the whole burn pit thing is, you'd think there'd be lesson learned with Agent Orange that, okay, let's get on board and deal with this right away. And I just don't want to see this generation go with what they went through.
Sure.
So, but
That's about what we have time for, Joe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
And just a real quick thing for our viewers, if they want to contact you, if you could give your number, and you're located in Milwaukee, correct?
Right. So I'm at the Milwaukee National Service Office, and our number is 414-902-5736.
Okay. One more time.
902-5736.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And that wraps up another edition of the award-winning show, The Outpost.